The stock market, often seen as an unpredictable and volatile field, is frequently misunderstood by investors who react impulsively to daily price fluctuations. This emotional reaction, which leads to feelings of euphoria when prices rise and discouragement when they fall, reflects a superficial understanding of the true role of the market. Rather than viewing the market as a fickle and random entity, Ben Graham, one of the greatest investors of all time, teaches us a revolutionary approach. He compares the stock market to a peculiar and unpredictable business partner called Mr. Market, who shows up every day offering irrational buy or sell prices for stocks. What makes Mr. Market so interesting, and at the same time, dangerous, is his unpredictable and manic nature. He can be overly optimistic or desperately pessimistic, depending on his mood, without considering the true fundamentals of the companies he is evaluating. Throughout this text, we will explore how Graham's philosophy can change the way we view the stock market and how we can actually leverage its fluctuations to our advantage, rather than being guided by them. Graham reminds us that the market is not there to instruct us on what to do, but to serve our interests by offering us opportunities when the time is right. He teaches us to focus on the true value of companies, based on their solid fundamentals, and to ignore the irrational prices presented by Mr. Market. This approach, coupled with concepts like margin of safety and the analysis of the true value of companies, forms the backbone of an effective investment philosophy. By understanding the true purpose of the stock market and applying these principles, we can transform the way we make investments, seeking businesses with lasting competitive advantages and avoiding the trap of emotional speculation. I began my journey in the world of investing at the age of 11. Before that, I spent much of my childhood simply dreaming and postponing any concrete initiatives. Around the age of 7 or 8, I was already interested in business and money, but I still didn't have the discipline or knowledge to actually get started. It was only at 11 that I finally took my first step. I bought my first stock. It was an exciting moment that marked the beginning of a journey full of curiosity, attempts, and learning. In the early years, I dove headfirst into experimentation. I tried to predict market behavior, analyzed charts, and followed strategies that seemed promising, but were, at their core, almost outlandish. I found all of this incredibly fun, like a great game, but in practice, it didn't generate any profit. It was a fruitless effort, but one that taught me important lessons. I followed this experimental path until I was 19, always seeking to understand more, even if it was in an intuitive and disorganized way. One of the things that helped me a lot during this period was reading. I spent countless hours at the public library, absorbing everything I could find about investing. I read everything from basic manuals to the more complex works of the time. To me, it was fascinating. Discovering how money could grow and how the market worked seemed like a puzzle full of possibilities. However, I lacked a solid foundation. I didn't have a system or structure to guide me. I was just groping in the dark, hoping that small details in the charts would give me magical clues about the future of a stock. It was a somewhat naive thought, but it was the way many did things, and I thought I should follow the same path. There were even moments when I would look at the charts upside down, trying to find some pattern that made sense. Of course, none of this worked, but the process was fun, and it kept me motivated. I was determined to learn, even without a clear method. Everything began to change in 1949 when I came across Ben Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor. I had never heard of him before, but that book was a turning point in my life. Within its pages, I found something I had never experienced, a solid philosophical foundation for investing. Although the book is filled with valuable teachings, 2 chapters in particular stood out to me. They completely changed the way I viewed the market. The concepts Graham presented were so simple and basic that, at first glance, it was hard to understand how they could be so revolutionary. But upon deeper reflection, I realized that these ideas were like the 10 Commandments, seemingly simple guidelines that could completely transform the approach of anyone who followed them. The first concept that impacted me was that a stock represents a part of a business. This idea seems obvious today, but at the time, it was a revelation to me. I used to see stocks merely as symbols on the stock ticker, something abstract and disconnected from reality. Graham taught me to look beyond that. He showed me that to evaluate a stock, you must first understand the business behind it. What is the company's economic model? Who are its competitors? What is its management like? These questions began to guide my thinking. I remembered how, at 11 or 12 years old, I knew almost all of the ticker symbols of companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange by heart. I was a kind of walking almanac of stock codes, able to update Harris Upham's boards effortlessly. For example, I knew that X represented U.S. Steel and T was a T&T. But deep down, I knew nothing about the companies behind those symbols. Everything was superficial, and what Graham did was open my eyes to the essential. What really matters is the business. The second great lesson from Graham came in Chapter 8, where he introduced the concept of Mr. Market. This extraordinary metaphor completely changed the way I reacted to stock market fluctuations. Graham describes Mr. Market as a fickle figure, sometimes euphoric, sometimes desperate, offering irrational prices for stocks. He teaches that the wise investor should remain rational, ignoring emotional fluctuations and taking advantage of the opportunities that the market presents. I've never read anything better on how an investor should deal with stock prices. What Graham conveyed in this chapter is a timeless principle that remains relevant today. With these two concepts, I began to build the framework that would guide my investment philosophy for the rest of my life. Many people react inadequately to stock price fluctuations. They get excited when their investments rise and discouraged when they fall. Often they believe that the stock market is there to guide them, and that Mr. Market, this figure in the investment market, should be followed, as if he were a sort of mentor. But the truth is that he is none of these things. Mr. Market is a very peculiar partner. He is, in fact, an extraordinarily fickle and sometimes even insane partner. This partner shows up every day and tells us the price at which he would buy or sell a stock, almost irrationally. And the most interesting part is that, unlike any private business, where negotiations happen in a more stable and calculated manner, this Mr. Market is always available to offer us a price, whether to buy or sell, impulsively. Imagine that you and I are partners in a gas station, and every day Mr. Market shows up and says, "I want to buy your half of the gas station or sell my half to you for the same price as yesterday." He does this every day. Now, imagine the huge disadvantage this would represent for you as a partner, because this behavior of Mr. Market, this constant offering of variable prices, is completely unpredictable. But the most curious part is that he is an alcoholic and manic depressive, completely unpredictable. He will spend the whole day looking at meaningless things, generating absurd prices for stocks, and often these prices will be so irrational that you don't even need to worry about them unless they favor you. The important thing here is that you don't need to do anything when he presents an arbitrary or insane price. Only when he is excessively depressed, extremely excited, or even drunk should you take that moment to act in your favor. This is what is fascinating about stocks. If you analyze the highest and lowest prices of various American company stocks over the course of a year, you'll see a great disparity. The price can go up or down for no apparent reason, while the business continues operating normally, producing goods and services. If you look, for example, at agricultural land in any given area or residential buildings, you'll see that these values don't fluctuate with the same intensity. Agricultural land will never double in value overnight, and a residential building will rarely see a 10% variation in just 1 year. However, the best American companies have their prices fluctuating massively, with no clear explanation for this. And the best part, you don't need to play the stock market game all the time. The market is there just to serve you when you choose, not to give you instructions or control your behavior. One of the most important lessons Ben Graham teaches us is that the stock market does not exist to tell us what to do, but to serve our interests when we decide to act. The market has no feelings, and even less do the stocks it trades. You might be emotionally involved, but the stock, as part of a business, has no consideration for you. It is there, being traded, whether you own it or not. If you look at the stocks of a company like Berkshire Hathaway, for example, their value is tied to the value of the business as a whole. If the company is worth 75 times the value of its stock, that's a good investment. If not, then it's not. The value of the business is what matters, and that's what you should focus on. Often in the stock market, we hear about price targets or performance estimates, but rarely do we find anyone who truly analyzes the real value of a business for the next 20 years. Most analyses focus on market price, not the fundamental value of a company. One of the things I always try to do when analyzing investments is to look at companies without knowing their stock price. This helps prevent the market price from influencing my decisions. If you really want to evaluate a company based on its fundamentals, it's best not to know the stock price until you have a clear idea of what the company is worth. This is similar to when I was younger and used to make bets on horse races. I'd look at the past performance of the horses and try to calculate the odds of each winning, without first looking at the betting odds. This helped me assess the situation more objectively, without being influenced by public expectations. Another crucial concept that Graham teaches us is the margin of safety. This principle is simple. If you come across a bridge that says its capacity is 10,000 kilograms and your truck weighs 9,800 kilograms, you wouldn't drive across it without thinking twice. You would look for a safer bridge with a larger margin of safety. In the stock market, the concept is the same. We shouldn't take unnecessary risks. When you find a company that has a good margin of safety, with solid fundamentals and an attractive valuation, you can feel safer investing. But you should never try to cut costs to the maximum and take unnecessary risks. These fundamental principles form the basis of a good investment philosophy, and based on them, you can build various investment strategies. If you keep these concepts in mind, you'll be on the right track. The key, especially when dealing with large sums of money, is to understand the business you are investing in. If you had $1 million and had to invest in 3 companies in the state of Tennessee, for example, you would perform a detailed analysis of several companies. What would you look for? Companies with lasting competitive advantages, something that allows them to withstand competition and generate profit in the long term. You wouldn't buy, for example, a Burger King franchise just because there's no competitor within a 10-kilometer radius. You'd know that sooner or later companies like Wendy's or McDonald's would be there to compete with it. You would look for companies with a moat, a lasting competitive advantage that protects them from new competitors. This could be something like a patent, a strategic location, or even a strong brand, like Coca-Cola, which has near-universal brand recognition and an unbeatable competitive advantage. If a company has this kind of moat around its business, it has an edge over competitors. And for all of this to work, it's essential that the company is well managed by honest and competent people. If you have good management and a lasting competitive advantage, that will be an excellent investment opportunity. The process of evaluating businesses and selecting investments can be complicated, but by focusing on these ideas and principles, you can significantly increase your chances of making good investments. They analyzed how the human mind, in the face of billions and billions of possibilities, can group them in a way that limits the options to only 4 or 5. Of course, when humans play something like deep thought or any newer version of advanced computers, these machines might be doing 700,000 or even 1,000,000 calculations per second. The human mind, on the other hand, is competing against this immense processing power, but somehow has the ability to eliminate almost 99.999% of the possibilities that the computer needs to analyze and focus only on the 3 or 4 alternatives that truly make sense. Investing is something similar because it's not as hard as it seems. There's a limited number of companies, and you can quickly discard them. For example, if someone told me that my life depended on choosing from the Dow Jones stocks, the 10 that would perform best and outperform the index, I would start the process of eliminating options. I would think about the weakest companies within the index, discard the bad options, and once those were out, I would focus on the remaining ones. This process of elimination is actually an easier way to approach the problem than trying to choose the 10 best options. If you were thinking about the state of Tennessee, for example, there would be a number of things you wouldn't need to analyze. You'd simply decide that they're too complex to get involved with, like car dealerships, which will always be highly competitive. Who knows if Ford or General Motors will be selling more cars in 5 years? And will there be impacts from terrorism or other external factors affecting the car market? So you'd just discard the car dealership sector and consider other types of investments. This process of elimination is the same approach you should take when investing in the stock market. Today, There are around 3,000 companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and each of them has an associated valuation. This valuation will change the next day, but you don't need to make investments every day. If throughout your life you have just 5 good investment ideas, that may be more than enough to substantially grow your wealth. I often tell my students that it would be better if, upon leaving school, they had a punch card with only 20 spaces. With that, instead of getting carried away by suggestions from friends or bar conversations and making impulsive purchases the next day, they would really think about each of those choices more carefully. After all, you only have 20 opportunities throughout your life, and that's more than enough if you focus on the right decisions. The key is not to make these choices for trivial reasons. At Berkshire Hathaway, we never buy small companies because it simply isn't worth it. We want to think about companies that can really move the needle, those with the potential to generate large returns. Of course, as capital grows, it becomes harder to find opportunities of this kind, but that is the focus you should maintain when it comes to investments. The investment philosophy proposed by Ben Graham, addressing the idea of the stock market as an unpredictable partner, offers a profoundly different perspective from the traditional view many investors have of the market. Instead of seeing the market as a mechanism of instruction, where stock prices tell us something about a company's true value, Graham teaches us that the market is merely a tool we can use according to our needs. It's not there to tell us what to do, but rather to provide opportunities when those opportunities are based on rational analysis and careful evaluation of businesses. One of the most powerful concepts presented by Graham is that of Mr. Market, a metaphor used to describe the irrational nature of the financial market. This character, described as manic-depressive, can offer stock prices that vary dramatically from one day to the next, based on emotional fluctuations rather than the underlying fundamentals of companies. For an investor, this can be both an opportunity and a risk. If you understand that the market is irrational and unpredictable, you can choose to ignore daily market prices and focus on deeply analyzing companies, identifying those that offer real value, with strong growth prospects and lasting competitive advantages. The key to this approach lies in the ability to filter out the noise and not be influenced by the emotions that the market evokes. The concept that the stock market is not there to teach us anything, but to provide us with an opportunity, completely changes the way we should view stock prices and volatility. Instead of reacting emotionally to these fluctuations, Graham guides us to seek companies with strong fundamentals that have a clear competitive edge and that, over time, provide consistent returns. When Mr. Market offers irrational prices, whether through exaggerated optimism or excessive pessimism, the opportunity for the intelligent investor arises. This is especially relevant for those adopting a long-term approach, looking not just for immediate profits, but for investments that will appreciate over time based on their true business strength. The principle of the margin of safety is another key point in Graham's philosophy. When we invest, we can never be absolutely sure of a company's future value. Thus, the margin of safety serves as a kind of cushion, protecting the investor from significant losses if things don't go as expected. Graham teaches us to invest in companies whose intrinsic value is substantially higher than the market price, creating a margin that allows us to navigate market downturns without jeopardizing the long-term expected return. This concept helps mitigate risks and reduce the likelihood of catastrophic losses, making the investment safer and more predictable. Moreover, the margin of safety also ensures that the investor is not overestimating a company's value, especially in more volatile markets. By focusing on the real value of a business, rather than being swayed by daily fluctuations in stock prices, the investor avoids the dangers of speculation. Speculating is a risky game, where the investor bets on short-term price directions, often ignoring a company's fundamentals. Investment based on Graham's principles, on the other hand, seeks to acquire stakes in companies that are undervalued in the market but have solid long-term growth potential. Another important aspect of Graham's thinking is the emphasis on understanding the underlying business. Investing is not just about buying and selling stocks. It's about understanding what you're buying. Investing effectively requires a deep analysis of various aspects of a company. This includes examining its management, competitive advantage, business model, competitors, and growth potential. By adopting a fundamental approach, rather than being swayed by speculation or market news, investors significantly increase their chances of long-term success. This method demands patience, diligence, and a meticulous approach. Investing based on fundamentals, rather than focusing on short-term market movements, typically results in more consistent and predictable returns. What makes this philosophy so effective is its simplicity. Many investors get lost in complicated analyses, trying to predict market movements or follow trends. Benjamin Graham's approach, however, is clear and pragmatic, focusing on the intrinsic value of companies, seeking a margin of safety, and understanding the nature of the business are steps that any investor can follow. You don't need to be a genius to invest successfully. You need to be disciplined, patient, and willing to learn from your mistakes. According to Graham, success in investing doesn't come from the ability to predict market movements, but from the ability to invest in quality companies at reasonable prices. He emphasizes that by seeking companies with solid underlying values, investors can safeguard their resources against the whims of the market. This approach allows investors to focus on what truly matters, the fundamentals that support the company's growth and stability over time. An essential aspect of this philosophy is management. The importance of good management in assessing an investment cannot be overstated. Companies with competent and honest managers are more likely to make decisions that benefit shareholders in the long term. Conversely, poorly managed companies tend to produce bad results regardless of other favorable factors. Graham suggests that investors should look for companies so well structured that even average management could yield good results. This adds an extra layer of security for the investor, reducing risks associated with management performance. Another crucial component is the search for companies with lasting competitive advantages. This characteristic is what separates successful investors from average ones. A competitive advantage can take many forms: exclusive patents, strong brands, or privileged access to specific markets. These advantages allow a company to stand out in the market, continue generating consistent profits, and withstand adverse changes in economic conditions. Companies with these traits are more likely to thrive in the long term, while those without a clear advantage face higher risks of being overtaken by competitors. Moreover, Graham's philosophy highlights the importance of understanding the concept of intrinsic value. This represents the true value of a company, based on its assets, earnings, and future prospects. Investors who focus on intrinsic value, rather than being influenced by the market's emotional fluctuations, are able to make more rational decisions. This approach avoids common speculative mistakes, such as buying overvalued stocks or selling valuable assets due to market panic. The idea of a margin of safety is another central pillar of this philosophy. The margin of safety represents the difference between a stock's market price and its estimated intrinsic value. By investing in stocks with a significant margin of safety, investors reduce the risk of financial losses, even if the original assessment of intrinsic value isn't entirely accurate. This practice protects investors from judgment errors and provides a way to deal with the uncertainties inherent in financial markets. Finally, success in investing depends on a long-term perspective. Many investors make the mistake of chasing quick gains, allowing emotions such as greed and fear to influence their decisions. This approach is rarely sustainable. Investing based on fundamentals requires patience and the willingness to ignore market distractions. Over time, this discipline rewards investors with consistent returns and the building of solid wealth. In conclusion, Benjamin Graham's philosophy on the stock market offers a rational and disciplined path to investing. His focus on in-depth company analysis, the pursuit of real value, and protection against emotional market fluctuations is a proven formula for financial success. By adopting these principles, investors not only avoid common speculative mistakes, but also establish a solid foundation for achieving long-term prosperity. Understanding the fundamentals of companies, prioritizing the margin of safety, and choosing businesses with lasting competitive advantages are the pillars of this approach. Investing based on these principles is a safer and more effective path, offering the potential to build consistent wealth over time with less risk and greater predictability.